おはようございます。今日も朝のフーディニ作業配信をやっていきたいと思います。ちょっと新年早々バタバタしてしまって配信している余裕がなかったのですが、今年はなんとか3日ぐらい3日空ける程度で配信を続けていきたいなとは思ってます。はい。今日の今日は VEX を使った作例をちょっと良さげなのがあったのでやっていこうかなと思います。はい。では動画を流します。
Hello and welcome to my second tutorial. Today we're going to look at how to make these concentric wavy cube type things. I'm not really sure how to explain them. This is going to be a fairly easy level tutorial. There's going to be a little bit of VEX, but it's nothing that's too difficult, and also it should be a fairly quick one. So with that, let's get started. Okay, so diving into Houdini.
最後に配信した時フーディニの画面を映さなかったので今回はちょっと忘れずにフーディニに切り替えます。はい。で、バージョンはいつも通り 18.5 でデスクトップはちょっとカスタマイズを入れてます。はい。では、開始します。
The first thing I'm going to do is show you how this works on a 2D grid, just to visualize the theory behind it, and then we'll make it for a cube. So the first thing is make a geometry node and dive inside, and we're going to make a grid like this, and then let's have a scatter. So we're going to scatter some points on the grid, and these are going to be our seed points for the effect. So
この人のスタイルに合わせるか。
if we now just make a point wrangle like so. So the first thing we want to do is, while we're running over every point in the grid, which is what the wrangle does, we want to find which of our scattered seed points, and we can just visualize those here. So which one of these points is closest to each one of the points on the grid? And to do that,
なんでこれテンプレートフラグ立てねえのにワイヤー出てんだ。不思議やな。まあいいや。
we're going to use a VEX function called nearPoint. We want to store the number of that point inside an integer. So if we make an integer called, I'm going to call it endpoint for nearPoint, and it's going to equal nearPoint, and it's 1 because it's the second input. The first one would be 0, and it's at P because that's the position we want to search. So now each one of these points on this grid is storing whichever one of those points is nearest to it. And then we want to get the position of those points. So we use a vector for that. So we call it vector, and we call it target pos, and that's going to equal 0.1 p for position, and then the point number that we want the position for is endpoint. And then what we want to do is we need to know the distance between our point that we're looking at and the position of the target point. So to do that, we make a float called dist, and that's going to equal distance between at p and target pos. Whoops, caps locked there. At p and get pos. There we go. And then to visualize that distance, we're going to say at p dot y equals the sine of dist. And now you'll see that we distort our plane, and it's really hard to see what's going on because we haven't got enough geometry. But if we add some rows, let's go with 100, so you can see what's happening.
そっからの距離出してサインかけてんのか。
From each point, we're generating a sine wave which travels out in every direction. And now what we want to do is we want to modulate that sine wave. So to do that, we're going to need a frequency and an amplitude. So if we make a float called frec, and that's going to equal CHF frequency. And then if we just copy that, and we're going to make another one that's called amp, like so, and that's going to be the amplitude. And the amplitude isn't so important for what we're doing, but it's nice to have it there. So if we set this, and then we need to plug them in. So what you do is we're going to times the or multiply the distance by frequency, and then we're going to multiply the result of the sine function by the amplitude. So now when I drag the frequency, you can see that you can see exactly what's happening. So we're generating this sine wave that travels out from every point until it runs into, you know, another sine wave. So this is basically it. We're going to make this same thing but in 3D space for a cube, and instead of moving the points up on the y-axis, which is what we're doing here, we're going to use it to drive the density in a volume. So to do that, we're going to need a cube, and then if we take the cube and we're going to take our scatter, and we're going to scatter some points on its surface. So we just zoom in. Okay, and then you can see we have the cube and we have the scattered points on the surface. And then we're going to make VDB from polygons. There we go. We don't want the cube to be a distance VDB, we want it to be a fog VDB named density. and we'll just take the voxel size down just a little bit, so it's 0.01. And then we need a volume wrangle. And a volume wrangle is just like a point wrangle, except instead of running over the points, it's going to run over every single voxel that's in this volume. And we can actually use most of the same code. So if we copy it over, like we instead a little bit, so 0.01. And then we need a volume wrangle. And a volume wrangle is just like a point wrangle, except instead of running over the points, it's going to run over every single voxel that's in this volume. And we can actually use most of the same code. So if we copy it over, like this, and we hit the button to get our controls, frequency of 1. And what we're going to do is instead of at p.y, it's going to be at density. And then if we check bind each volume to density, and we plug these in, and we just have to up the frequency a little bit, you'll see that we get something similar to our end result. Okay, so what we now need to do is we need to convert this density volume back into a signed distance field. So we do that with convert VDB like this, and we're going to convert from fog to SDF. There we go. And then we're going to convert that VDB again. And then we're going to convert that VDB again. And this time we're going to convert straight to polygons. And you might be wondering why we went to an SDF first rather than just going straight to polygons. And it's because what we can do here is just in between, we can add a VDB smooth SDF. And that'll just give us a slightly smoother, nicer result. Another thing that's going to really improve the result is taking this voxel size down even lower than 0.01, but it really starts to slow things up, so I'm not going to do that for the tutorial. So to colour it, we can use basically the exact same information, the distance from each point, to drive a colour gradient. So we do that with a point wrangle. We can basically copy this exact code inside like this, amplitude of 1, and I think we have the distance. To colour it, we can use basically the exact same information, the distance from each point, to drive a colour gradient. So we do that with a point wrangle. We can basically copy this exact code inside like this, amplitude of 1, and I think we have the frequency to 64. So if we set the frequency to 64, and then instead of the density, we say at CD. And actually, we don't need to times by the amplitude this time, it's unimportant. We do need to just change the output of this sine wave. A sine wave, as we know, outputs between -1 and 1, so we just need to fit this. Instead of being from -1 to +1, -1 to 1, we need to fit it between 0 and 1, and that's just because the colour value is obviously between 0 and 1. And there we go, we didn't plug in the scatter, so we need the points. And then right now our frequency here is basically the same as this one, which means that for each one of these sine waves we're looping through the color spectrum, but we don't want to do that. We want to divide it by 2, and you see that's going to give us 2 loops for each sine wave, and we can use this to drive a shader in Redshift. So I'll show you how to do that. So if we go to our material view, and then we're going to make a
レッドシフトでやるのか。
RS material builder, and we're going to call the material box RS material builder. And we're going to call the material box. And then if we go to, we make an RS material like that. And now we need to make an attribute node, point attribute node. So our point attribute node is going to read CD, which I'll
CD か。
is the color, and we're going to pass it into the diffuse color, and then put this into the surface. And actually, we probably want a ramp. There we go. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this to 0.5 exactly, and I'm going to set both of these to be constant. And then if we assign this material to our object, so if we go to here and we just type in map and then the name of the object, and then if I fire up the render view, and there we have it with color. And then if I fire up the render view, And there we have it with color. And yeah, if we go into the material, by changing the colors in the ramp, we can change these colors. So we can make it orange. There we go. So, okay, stop the render view. And one thing you might want to do is to animate it. So to do that, object, and the scene view again. And what we're going to do,
やけに遅いな。遅いな、これ。なんでだ。
is inside here. With the distance, we're just going to put it in brackets. And we're going to add to it at time. So what's going to happen if we look at this wrangle? You see, as we scrub, you can see that we're actually animating through the phase. Let's just say times time, 0.2. There we go. And then what we need to do is we also need to take this and we need to add it to the color as well. Just like that. There we go. And now this is very, very slow, but you can see it does work. Right, so that about concludes the tutorial really. I hope you enjoyed it. Just like that. There we go. And now this, and then what we need to do is we also need to take this and we need to add it to the color as well. Just like that. There we go. And now this is very, very slow, but you can see it does work. Right, so that about concludes the tutorial really. I hope you enjoyed it. If there's any other things you'd like to see me do a tutorial on, just let me know in the comments or get me on Instagram. And I hope this helps somebody learn something. So thank you very much for watching, and bye bye.
言うて、できて、このレッドシフト早くねえんだよな。こんなもんか。なんだこれ。レッドシフトの設定良くないのかな。非常に遅い。はい。まあちょっと、レンダリングはこの後やっておくので、一旦、こんな感じで作例ができました。はい。まあちょっと VEX は、あんまり関数ちゃんと分かってないので、やってることは分かるんですが、関数が、これは近くから多分、近くのポイント取ってきて、そのポイントとの距離を求めるみたいなことだと思うが、 ニアポイントってなんだっけ？見れないんだっけ？このエクスプレッションいけんのか？ああ、やっぱ一番近いポイントの番号を返すのか。うん。なるほど。この辺のな、SDF の使い方がいまいちよくわかんないんだよ。まあでも、球場で距離取ってるだけだから、まああんま変わらないのか。EB をラングルで操作するのがあんまり慣れてないから、こういう形状になるんだな。うん。で、センスかけて、はい。では、今日はこんなところにします。ありがとうございました。